Hello, welcome to another special episode of Inside North East Non-League Football. We have another chairman on to discuss everything going on at his club. It is a familiar face, someone I've known for a good while now, a colleague in the media, a friend, someone who worked on Football Matters many moons ago with me, and someone that's very well known around the North East Non-League scene. It is Whickham chairman, Ross Gregory. Welcome along, Ross.
Hi, Mark. You all right? Are we friends now? Are we? When did this happen?
Well, I'll say acquaintance, and we've just downgraded you, so well done. And now instead of Whickham chairman, you're Whickham, Whickham Lucky, we'll call you now, just for that.
Fair enough.
We should say, first of all, recording this on Friday morning, so in the aftermath of a hard-earned win at Crook on Thursday night, ahead of a home game on Saturday, which we always do. We put up next 5 fixtures, so that'll be after Saturday's game. And a little bit of detail about the club. Now we're looking at the season. I don't like the way you're looking at those fixtures. They are correct, I presume.
They are correct.
That was a judgy look there. But yeah,
we might be changing. We might be changing one of them to a Friday night. But as of publication, as of recording time, they are correct. Yes.
Such as the validity of the season with fixtures and movements and postponements and such like. I guess, first of all, just look at it generally, that the season's been a real challenge, not just for Whickham, but for every non-league club, with the rain, the snow, the frost, whatever you want to do. It's been a real challenge.
It's been unprecedented, Mark, the amount of games that have been called off, the amount of pitch inspections we've done. We seem to be constantly at the glebe inspecting pitches before pretty much every home game. It's been a nightmare, and like you say, it's not just for us. I mean, I think we've still got something like 7 or 8 home league games left to try and squeeze in, because we have had a number postponed, and we've had the issues around the FA Cup, the FA Vars, and the cup runs that we've had, which I know we'll come on to in a little bit. But the weather's just been horrific. I've been quite vocal about it at times on social media as well, and saying that non-league teams, grassroots teams, and I'm not just talking non-league football. I'm talking below that as well, in terms of junior sport, grassroots football as a whole. It needs help. It's going to need help over the next 5-10 years, in terms of investment, in terms of the strategy, because pitches just can't cope at the minute. There's not the resource. There's not the in some cases the drainage or the kind of the infrastructure around these clubs to cope with extreme weather conditions. And that's what, unfortunately, I think what we're going to see more and more of over the next few years is these extreme weather conditions, like we've seen over the last 6 months or so. I mean, we had a game called off in August, or July, August, because of torrential rain. So this isn't going to go away, unfortunately. I feel desperately sorry for some clubs in particular around the non-league scene. We've obviously got close relationships with clubs like Dunstan, who've been really affected and being forced to play home games 150 miles away, or up at concert or wherever, which affects them and affects income. But and it's affecting everybody. It's a real nightmare. So I'm not 100% certain what the answer is. I think we probably need to look at some 4G pitches more, but you're talking $1 million plus in terms of pounds to be able to put those in place. And we all want to really stay on grass pitches, but if the resource, if the money, if the help isn't put into non-league football and grassroots football, it's gonna be a real tricky period over the next few years for the leagues to try and get them games in, for the clubs to try and keep playing games and generate the revenue that they need from home games to be able to sustain themselves as well. But hopefully the weather gets better. But this has been unprecedented. But you just don't know, and I don't think it will. I think it's here to stay, unfortunately.
I know from speaking to a few people that someone mentioned a statistic that the total cost of travel spent by non-league clubs across across the country was over £12 million, and that if you sort of look at restructuring leagues, you could at least half that, and then that additional funding can go into slowly building up the amount of 4G pitches. I mean, I guess it's that kind of radical thinking that if non-league is going to survive long term, may well be needed.
I think so, Mark. Yeah, I think that there has to be a proper thought out strategy. That's something that's not just a short term fix, something that's going to work long term for the good of the non-league game, for the good of grassroots football. And it may be that that some of the ideas, some of the things that we have to look at are quite radical. You know, it may be that we might have to see more ground sharing options as well. You know, whether that's around a 4G pitch. And having a bit more kind of hubs, which I don't think is ideal, but it might be that, you know, even if we put 2 or 3 or 4 games on a day and just have, you know, kind of non-league days at a concert or a Morbid or somewhere like that, and you know, have packages of tickets, you know, where it's 25 quid and you get to see 3 or 4 games or whatever, and all clubs take a kind of cut of it or whatever. I don't quite know the ins and outs, but I think there does have to be some radical thinking around the structuring of the leagues, around travel, around costs, and around certainly obviously around the pitches.
I've actually said, and I think I've written it before for the Sunderland Echo, that I think it's bizarre that in this country we are one of the only countries in Europe that has a non-league pyramid where clubs are travelling over 300 miles to go to games. I mean, look at sort of Blythe Spartans going to Bishop Stortford, and Needham Market could be in the league next season as well, if they stay in the National League North, of course. But then I think the piece I wrote was saying that it wouldn't be a bad thing to go back to the old structure of sort of Division 3 North and South, and having any league below the Championship, for me, should be divided North and South, and then everything else is further regionalised below that. I mean, I just can't get my head around it. That would reduce costs, and obviously there'd be a lot of restructuring need to do. But I think drastic times and drastic measures and all that. But just getting back to Whickham, looking at the season so far, it's kind of been it's difficult to lump in the league and the cups together, because the cups have been what I would say is an overwhelming success. You look at the Vars run, the FA Cup run. I mean, you know, playing teams like Bury and Macclesfield, and obviously, of course, as you can see on screen there, coming up the game against West Auckland in the Dublin Challenge Cup final. It's in the cups. It's been very, very successful.
It's been a great season in the cups. You know, we've had some great games. We've had some great draws as well. You hit lucky with the draws. Yeah, you get what you're given type of thing. But you know, to have Macclesfield come up to Whickham was brilliant. Probably the biggest game and biggest gate that we've had in God knows how long. Fantastic day. Then, you know, obviously we lost that one and went out of the FA Cup, but you know, it was great for the community to have that profile and that experience. It was great for the club to experience a kind of, you know, Macclesfield pretty much. I think 3 days before we played them, they went and signed John Rooney, Wayne Rooney's brother, from I think it was Oldham, someone like that. You know, so virtually almost a pro club, pretty much. So to have them come up and for us to try to host that game of that size and that magnitude was a real experience for us, a real learning curve, and great for the profile. That raised the profile of the club within the community, which is what we're trying to do. And then Bury as well, having Bury come was another big game, big crowd, and you know, we won that one in the Vars. And the cups have been a real kind of shining light for us this season. It's been, you know, we've had some great experiences, some great trips, big games, fantastic wins, a little bit of heartache and a little bit along the way as well. But that's cup football for you. And we've got the game at Stadium of Light at the end of the season against West Auckland in the Dublin Challenge Cup final still to come. So, you know, it's been the main focus of our season so far this season, the cups. The league form hasn't quite been as strong and as consistent, I think, as what we would have wanted. And you know, if you speak to Lee, the manager, he'll be the first to admit, and I've had conversations with him about it, that, you know, he'll be judged on his league form, he thinks, so over the course of the season, because that's how you know, I suppose your best teams are judged over the course of a season. A slight caveat with that is that the league form the league kind of focus has been put to one side a little bit, because we've had so many games called off or we've been playing in the cups and everything else like that. So it's understandable, you know, if we're not a big enough or a strong enough team or club yet to be able to compete on 3 or 4 fronts in the league, in the Vars, in the cups, everything else like that. We're just not at that stage yet. So unfortunately, with these things, sometimes something has to give, and the league form suffered a little bit as a result. But look, if you'd offered us at the start of the season mid-table in the league, a decent FA Cup run in a big game, a good FA Vars run, and being the last Northern League club still in it, and a cup final at the Stadium of Light at the end of the season, we would have snapped your hands off, undoubtedly.
It's been a period of change for the club. Obviously, you know, we go back a few years when the Carl Finnegans and players like that signed, you know, some high-profile signings. Adam Bartlett came in. You look at where it is now, and obviously, you know, without going into figures, the budget isn't what it was back then. But is it a case of now that it's in a more sustainable state, I guess?
I think so, Mark. I think that's what every non-league club or the majority of non-league clubs are trying to achieve. It's really difficult because you want the balance. It's getting that balance right between putting a competitive team out on the pitch that is that's going to attract fans. It's going to win games, which in turn attract more fans. You know, we wouldn't have had some of the gates that we've had without the success that we've had in the cup competitions, and success kind of breeds success. I've been in the role now as chairman for about 18 months or so. Sometimes it feels a lot longer. And I've been back at the club in different forms for 4 or 5 years, and I've obviously been in and around the club for about 20 years now. This for me it's a real interesting period for the club because we're building trying to build a sustainable model. We've gone from having 2 junior teams attached to the club just probably 3 years ago now to having 18 teams attached. That's the model that we're trying to do. We're trying to build the infrastructure around the club. So we've got a sustainable model that connects in with the community, that builds something that's sustainable, not just purely focused on the first team. But at the same time, you've got to focus still on the first team. You've still got to that's your pinnacle. That's the one that gets the profile. You know, without the first, you know, without playing Macclesfields and Berries and everything else like that, you wouldn't be able to attract as many people. That's what the profile is there for. That's where you get the column inches in the press, and why we come on shows like yours and speak to people and so on and so forth. Not necessarily because of the infrastructure, but for me that's just as important as building them foundations so that there's a solid footing for the club, that it's not just going to disappear when one sponsor or one person pulls the money. We've got various different revenue streams that we can build into the club and just connect it in better to the community, which is really important for all of us, and hopefully we're on the right track there.
I was going to ask, I mean, you've had a number of roles at the club, probably far too many to list, before time runs out here. But the last time you got the Durham Challenge Cup final, what was your role at the club, just to show that longevity you've had?
Yeah, I was kind of an assistant manager, or one of the management coaching roles at the club back then. I think I was 2006. I think we won it in 2006. We've got there once since then, but I never played in the final because we got kicked out for fielding an illegible player at one point. So yeah, going back, I was in the dugout at that point.
I mean, the club clearly means a lot to you. I mean, obviously a local lad and kind of spent the majority of adult life as part of the club.
Yeah. Look, through my work, Mark, as you know, you get to see a lot of football. You get to mix in and around different scenes, and the professional football scene is fantastic, and being in amongst that most days through my work as a journalist, that it's great, but it also can leave you a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? Not jaded, but just a little bit sometimes desensitized to some of the things and stuff that you hear in and around the professional game, which just leaves you a little bit cold. What I love about non-league football, about grassroots football, is the warmth, the humility, the connection that you have with people. It's real, and I'm not saying that Newcastle and Sunderland and Middlesbrough and so on and so forth isn't real, because it absolutely is. But it's for me, grassroots football, and be able to do that work in and around the community and give something back to it. We've all played we've all had people who've driven us to games, or who've coached us for nothing, who've done all that work behind the scenes for no reward or whatever. So to be able to give a little bit back to that is great. But for me, it's also just about enjoying your football, enjoying your Saturday afternoon, enjoying going for a few pints, or it's hard work. Don't get us wrong, Mark. It's really hard work, and the amount of stuff that goes in behind the scenes from everybody who runs non-league football. I'm not, we're not exclusive to that at Whickham. What every volunteer does is incredible. But yeah, I'm a Whickham lad. I've lived in Whickham all my life, pretty much, and it's a club that's really close to my heart. So hopefully I can keep playing a role, whatever it is, whether it's chairman or boot boy or washing the kit or doing the program or whatever. I don't care, as long as I can contribute in some way. That's all I'm really interested in.
One of the big things I was going to mention was about volunteers, because when I come up to Whickham, and sometimes you'll be on the gate, taking money. You'll be selling half-time draws, and sometimes even serving in the food counter as well. It is one of those clubs, isn't it, that really is held up by volunteers, as many are across the region. They're just essential.
Yeah, look, we've got a really good committee, a really good bunch of volunteers, and I don't know what every other club's like, but we base it around the fact that we've got certain people who do certain roles. I don't want to sound like Liam Neeson. They've got set of specific skills that they'll work on, and some people you'll not see them on a match day, but they do a lot of work during the week, or they do a lot of work at key points in the season. That might be on the commercial side, or on the organisation side, stuff behind the scene. And then you've got people who turn up at match days and want to help run the gate or run the cafe or everything else like that. And you can't exist at a club of Wickham size, or any club in the kind of non-league scene, in the non-league setup, can't survive without a bunch of good, hardy, loyal, hard-working, unsung kind of volunteers, unsung heroes. So we're fortunate that we've built a good group up behind the scenes, and they're fantastic. I certainly couldn't do what I do without the support of all of them.
If we get back to the on-field stuff, I mean, looking at the season as a whole, there's kind of one player, as much as your squad is full of talented players, that is standing out at the moment. Scored his 50th goal of the season on Thursday night at Crook, Scott Robson. There will be inevitable comparisons made with Aidan Rutledge, who obviously earned a move higher up the pyramid on the back of what he did at Birtley last season. Are you anticipating a battle to hold on to Scott this summer?
Oh yeah. Don't get us wrong. I'm not naive enough to think that there's not going to be some clubs looking at Scott and look, we've done really well to keep a hold of Scott so far. That there's been little bits and pieces of interest in Scott, and rightly so, because he's a fantastic player. He's a great striker, and he's a great lad. Him and his dad and his family, a real pleasure to have around the club. And Scott's been with us for I think about 5 years or so now, and came through as a real kind of young, raw prospect, and you've seen the development over the last couple of years, and this season he's been incredible. I think Scott can play, certainly, obviously, I think Scott can play at a higher level. There's no doubt at all about that. That's entirely up to Scott. We would never stand in his way. We've always said that. Desperately hope that we can keep a hold of him for maybe another season, and try to build something and achieve success with Scott. But if Scott decides to move on elsewhere, then we'll wish him the best of luck. Fantastic player, fantastic character, great family, great background, and been really loyal to Whickham over the last few years. So if anybody's watching though, he hands off sort of thing at least until the end of the season. But we'll address it in the summer. We've had conversations with Scott, and we'll see what comes up at the end of the season in the summer, and then take it from there.
It's quite astonishing though, because again, to compare him with Aidan Rutledge, Aidan sort of almost bubbled under a little bit and was slowly developing. Then all of a sudden had this season out of nowhere where, admittedly, one level lower than Scott's done it, but it feels a very similar story where Scott's sort of, you could see that improvement coming, but I don't think anyone stood at the start of the season and said he's going to get over 50 goals or what could be, 60, 65, 70 by the time the season finishes.
No, look, Scott's always been he works extremely hard. He puts defenders under pressure. He's a menace. He's a pest. He's added an element of physicality, I think, to his game. And he's always been a goal threat. He's always a threat at that top end with his pace and his power and everything else like that. I should be trying to undersell him here, shouldn't I? I shouldn't be trying to big him up too much.
Terrible, yeah, his first touch.
But he's been brilliant, and the development that we've seen with Scott over the last couple of years, which is testament to the coaches and managers that he's played with, and the teammates that he's played with as well. But more so just a testament to himself. He's really, I think probably the last, and it's really just, he's had a good season, don't get us wrong, all the way through, but the last month, 6 weeks or so, he's just hit a real kind of purple patch, and pretty much everything that he's touching's turned into goals. It's no surprise really for anybody who's watched him. It's as a forward, it's all about confidence as well, Mark. Once you get on that run, once you get on that scoring run, you'll know yourself from your five-a-side days, Mark. When you're banging them goals in, once your confidence is high, then it's in momentum's with you. It's such a powerful thing as a footballer, particularly a striker. And I don't know what level Scott can get to. I don't know where he'll end up, but if he continues the progression and the hard work that he's put in over the last few years, then hopefully he goes on to have a really, really good non-league career somewhere.
We'll move on from trying to sell you top goal scorer now. Looking at the management team, I spoke to Lee in the aftermath of the Newton Aycliffe win in the Durham Challenge Cup semi-final, and he sort of half joked that there was some surprise when he was appointed, that he maybe wasn't first choice or not the expected choice. But to be fair, what he's done over the last couple of years is he's developed the club on the pitch and developed the squad and put you in a position where, a top half finish is well, at the moment you are in the top half of Division 1. The squad's looking strong after what's been quite an overhaul. He has done a very progressive job, I guess you would say. Yeah,
look, when Lee came, when Tony Fawcett left as manager and went to Concert, that was a surprise for the club at the time. It was a bit of a shock. Not many of us saw that coming. And Tony was excellent and did a really good job. And Lee coming in, I understand what Lee's saying there. Probably, it probably maybe wasn't the high profile name or the obvious choice, but we spoke to a lot of candidates at the time, and Lee put himself at the front of the queue because of what he said and what he offered and what he certainly delivered on the pitch as well. So and he's more than proved he's good enough to manage in Division 1. He's got a real good eye for a player, as Lee. He knows players. He knows who good players are. He's got a good team around him in terms of his coaching staff and everything else like that. And the results on the pitch, like you say, with the cup runs that we've had this season have been phenomenal. Got a really strong squad. Works. There's a tight knit element to them now. We had a lot of upheaval at the start of the season, and some players that came in and went out in the injuries that we've had. Lee's had a lot to kind of cope with this season, but he's kept us on track. He's kept the focus with the squad and with the results. Like I said earlier, I know he's kicking himself a little bit because the league form isn't quite where he wanted to be, and he'd love to be pushing in and around the playoffs as we would as a club as well. But the achievement that he's done over the last kind of 18 months since he came in has been excellent if we can, if you can lift some silverware, the first bit of silverware that the club's lifted in whatever it is, 18 years or however long it is, would cap off a fantastic season for Lee and his team, and well deserved for them.
I think just to round off, just looking at the future of the club, you've sort of mentioned it earlier on about the junior clubs and trying to build that sort of the wider community as well, getting them involved. Seems to be a route more Northern League clubs are taking, where they're trying to attach themselves to or attach junior systems to the club. When we look at the league now, I think this season we're going to lose 2 high-profile clubs, obviously. If you look at what's at the top end of the league, there are still some big budgets. We've had conversations privately about where the league's going. Whickham, I think it's safe to say, will never have one of the bigger budgets in the league. It will be modest, we'll say. But do you feel there is a way you can still develop the club so you can challenge for honours on a regular basis, or challenge for promotion without sort of more investment from elsewhere?
That's a really good question, Mark. That's a really good question.
Thanks, Ross.
It's a rarity for you, mate, to be honest.
I've got a coffee this morning, so I'm flying. That's what it is.
No, look, it's a tricky one. Look, we work really hard as a club behind the scenes to provide a budget and to provide a kind of financial footing that I've got. I've got no qualms with. We're saying that we put a substantial amount of the budget that we raise into the first team, because we want the first team to be successful. But you're right, we will never have the budget that some teams have clearly got, and that's not me criticising other teams for the budgets. I know it's almost like a dirty word within normally football, budget this, budget that. So I've got no issues with it. It's some clubs earn and make a lot more revenue when they're able to spend it. It's like anything, and fair play to them. We wish we were in that position ourselves sometimes. To be able to challenge them, I think you've got to look a little bit. You've got to try to do things a little bit differently. We want to try and tap into some of the things that make Whickham unique, in terms of where we are and the pitch and the club and everything else like that, and just try to focus in a lot on kind of local players as well, which we've done pretty well in the past. And look, if I go back to that Durham Challenge Cup win in 2006, I can still name the starting 11 and the 5 subs pretty much, and probably about 70% of them were from Whickham. 70-80% were actually from Whickham, and I think that's really powerful. So to get back to your point, I think it will always be difficult for us to compete with some of the big boys at the top of the league and push on. But we've just got to try to be creative with some of the revenue streams that we've got. We've got to understand what we are as a club, and never put the club at risk, because it has been at risk. In the 20 years, 25 years, 30 years that I've been involved with it, there's been 1 or 2 hairy, scary moments at times, and we never want that to come back. So it's got to be sustainable. But I think we've shown this season we can compete. We've shown last season we compete. So the 2 seasons before this season, we finished 7th in both seasons, I think, which is punching really, really, well above our weight, in my opinion. And we're a top 10 club this season, 2 or 3 really good cup runs, so we can do it. We just need to grow the club and understand that some things aren't going to happen overnight. We're not going to be at the size or the capacity that some other clubs are in next season or in 2-year season. There's a 5-year plan with a club. We've got to stick to that. We've got to be realistic, and hope that the plans that we put in place do grow the club in the right areas and make us both a force on the pitch, but also a force off the pitch. And getting that balance is really important to me, Mark. It's got to be focused on the pitch. There has to be a focus on the pitch, but there's no point in having a team that's absolutely flying off the pitch if in 2 years it's not here, on 5 years it's not here, because it's not been sustainable and it's gone pop. So we've got to get that balance right, and that's the kind of the tricky part for us as a committee.
Ross Gregory. Thanks for what has been a very enlightening half an hour. I did say it would go longer than 20 or 25 minutes before we started recording. Best of luck to Whickham for the future, for the rest of the season. Still plenty to play for, given I think there's still 11 games left. I worked out last night, including the Challenge Cup final. But enjoy a hectic end of the season. Thanks again.
Appreciate it, Mark. Thank you.